Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 19 February 2026, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be looking into the 7 set of current affairs issues which have featured in today's newspaper. The handout of this very discussion has been pinned in the comment section below for your future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, in the first topic, we'll try and look into the employment and the growth potential of the tourism sector when it comes to India. We'll try and understand the challenges which are plaguing this particular sector performance, and we'll also understand that how India can transform its tourism landscape. Moving on to the second topic, herein we'll try and understand that why extrajudicial killings are on a rise in India, what are the ethical concerns associated with the same, and what are the Supreme Court guidelines in this particular respect. Moving on to the prelims pointer segment, herein we'll be looking into the current affairs issues which are more relevant from prelims perspective. So we'll be doing the value addition which would be relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So stay tuned. So now, beginning with the first topic, which is dealing with the tourism sector in India. This particular topic we can associate with GS paper 3, Indian economy, and the employment topic as well. Now, what is the context? So an editorial has appeared in The Hindu which makes a very valid point. It says that given the scenic beauty that we have in Kashmir, we should actually give a boost to the tourism sector in Kashmir. That would enable us to counter the terrorist ecosystem. Why? Because if we boost the tourism sector here, it would provide sustainable livelihood opportunity to the local youths. And that in turn would disincentivize them from joining the terrorist organization groups. Now, in this respect, we'll try and understand the tourism sector holistically. First aspect that we'll be looking into is the significance of this particular sector. So, if you look at the share of tourism sector to the GDP, it is somewhere between 5 to 6%. And the World Travel and Tourism Council has anticipated that by 2034, this sector share in the GDP would be 7.6%. Then, this sector is important from employment perspective also to realize the idea of employment-led growth. Why? Because this particular sector has the ability to absorb the semi-skilled as well as unskilled laborers. Okay? And in financial year 2023, this particular sector created 7.6 crore jobs. So it has huge employment potential as well. Then it is a major source of forex earning. Okay, if you look at this particular data point given by Ministry of Tourism, that in 2023, after 2023, we have been able to rebound the international tourist arrivals in India, what we used to have before the pandemic. Okay, and when you look at the forex earnings that we are making, so in financial year 2023, we earned around 28 billion US dollars. If you talk about India, we are ranked 14th worldwide when it comes to world tourism receipts. And which are the countries from where we are getting majorly the tourists? So it is USA, Bangladesh, UK, Australia and Canada. And another point why we need to focus upon tourism sector is because it helps us preserve the cultural heritage, which is getting negatively impacted because of the globalization, because of urbanization. So when you focus upon tourism sector, it creates incentives to basically preserve the local traditions and culture that we have. And that is something that we are doing under Adopt a Heritage scheme. How it helps in national integration through Dekho Apna Desh campaign. Because when you become well versed with the diverse culture which India encompasses, you tend to develop that tolerance, okay, and respect for diversity in culture in India. Then we need to focus upon this particular sector because it helps us to meet the idea of inclusive growth as well. Because when you focus upon tourism sector, it helps us develop the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Okay, examples could be Udaipur in Rajasthan, wherein we have basically turned the old palaces into luxury hotels. So if you give a boost to the tourism sector, and this is something that the government is also doing when it comes to promoting the homestays in the tribal areas. Okay, so that ways we are meeting two objectives. Firstly, preserving the tribal culture that we have in India, and secondly, it is enabling us to, ensure the development of the tribal belts as well. Okay, that ways we will be tackling with the Naxalism as well in the long run. Then, what are the challenges which are plaguing the performance of this particular sector? If you compare India with other countries like Singapore and Thailand, our performance is very bleak in this respect. Okay, if you look at Singapore and Thailand, they outperform India when it comes to the tourism sector because of their world-class infrastructure, and their infrastructure is affordable at the same time. They pay major emphasis when it comes to safety, security of the tourists which are coming in their country, and they majorly emphasize upon the cleanliness. Okay, now let's try and understand that why when it comes to India, we are not able to perform at the same level when it comes to Singapore and Thailand. So, we are majorly facing issues because of the 3 I's. First I is basically the image. Image basically refers to the perception of India when it comes to the people abroad. And why when it comes to India's image, it is getting deteriorated because of instances like this. You can see that how in Goa beach, the Indians actually forced the foreigners to forcibly take photos with them. And this was the same thing which took place in Mumbai. So, when it comes to India's image across the globe, it is that it is unsafe for women especially. So, the woman should not travel alone when it comes to India. And there are issues with respect to sanitation as well. You will be astonished to know that this is an issue which was highlighted by our own finance minister, Union Finance Minister, when she visited Hampi, which is one of the famous cultural heritage site that we have. Okay, which is associated with Vijayanagara Empire. And we have the famous Vithala temple here. And she highlighted that how there is poor sanitation facility when it comes to Hampi. So just imagine if the Union Finance Minister is pointing out what would be the scenario with the common people who are planning to visit this particular cultural as well as tourist site. Okay. Then the problem with the narrative building is also there. Experts point out that when it comes to India, we know that we have diverse culture. So you cannot fit India in a single narrative, Incredible India. If you actually want to build that narrative, you need to segment your appeal. Okay, you have to sell basically spiritual India, adventure India, luxury India. Spiritual India, wherein we will be advertising the Ramayana circuits, the Buddhist circuits, the Jainism related circuits. Adventure sports, that is something that you can sell when it comes to adventure India. Luxury India, the great palaces that you have, which you have turned into, luxury hotels and all. Okay, so narrative building is also very poor when it comes to India. We are just going with single narrative, that is Incredible India. We need to segment our appeal. Then another problem is, another I is India itself. Now, when it comes to India, our hospitality sector is not having, a positive outlook when it comes to the tourism sector. Why? When it comes to hospitality sector, we are witnessing a manpower shortage of around 40%. And why it is so? Because when it comes to the tourism sector, it is very seasonal in its orientation, especially when it comes to the hilly areas. Okay, when there is huge snowfall, you cannot visit that particular place. So what is happening with the youth, okay, the trained staff in the hospitality sector, instead of being a part of the tourism sector, they actually prefer to be a part of that sector wherein they have assured incomes. Okay, then when it comes to the service sector in India, it is not always tourist friendly. We have witnessed scammers, beggars, sexual harassment cases, which actually erodes the trust of the foreigners, tourists when it comes to India. And I have been studied in BHU. So therein I have seen this thing that when it comes to the rickshaw pullers, they charge exorbitant price when it comes to the foreign tourists who are visiting India. Okay, and this is not right. They feel that they are being scammed. Okay, this erodes their trust. And another problem is, when it comes to India, we have provided this visa on arrival facility to very few countries like Japan, South Korea, UAE. We have not opened this facility for other countries. So that is a problem that reduces the tourist footfall in India. Another I is your infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is one of the major factor which was outlined by the Union Ministry of Tourism assessment report in 2023. 41% of the stakeholders have cited lack of infrastructure as the key barrier to boosting tourist footfall in India. Another problem is the lack of last mile connectivity. We have not developed multi-logistic parks. Okay, so the different transportation sector, they are not connected with each other. So there is still lack of last mile connectivity. Then we need to focus upon cleanliness immensely. As you can see here, a Polish traveler exposed that how we have garbage and pollution near the Taj Mahal, which is one of the famous monuments. Okay, so cleanliness, especially when it comes to the public toilets, is a major concern, and this is a major concern especially for the females. Okay, because last time when I went to Vaishno Devi, I have seen that when it comes to the public toilets, they were very in deplorable situation, and if the females actually go to such toilets, they might have UTI, urinary tract infections. Okay, so when it comes to clean public toilets, it is something that we need to ensure. Apart from that, there is lack of reliable internet facilities, well-maintained heritage sites, which are something which we say that it is foundational if you want to boost your tourism sector. Now, let's look into what all steps the government has taken in this particular respect. So, to address the infrastructural gaps, we have come up with the Other Station scheme, wherein we are modernizing the railway stations, okay, improving the internet facilities and all, amenities and all. Then, to make the airline travel affordable, we have come up with the Udan scheme, and this is also going to help in last mile connectivity also, especially in the regions which were not earlier connected through airlines route. Then we have Swadesh Darshan as well as Prasad scheme, which aims to stimulate growth in niche tourism sector. For example, religious, heritage, wellness, medical and adventure tourism. Then we are also coming up with promotional campaigns, as I told you, Incredible India 2.0 campaign, and we have also started with this Find the Incredible You campaign. What we are doing in this is, we are putting in the the real life experiences of the tourists who visited India. For example, to promote yoga, okay, we have created a documentary in that respect. Then to promote wellness, we have the reincarnation of Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Okay, so like that we are selling the stories. This is related to your promotional campaign, that why you should visit India. You can experience luxury hotels, you can witness yoga, you can witness a reincarnation like what Mr. and Mrs. Jones had. Okay, so like this we are creating videos on social media which would actually help us to attract the foreign tourist. Then we are also coming up with the information helplines to ensure the safety and security of the tourists. We have AThithi Devo Bhava, which is a 24/7 multilingual tourist helpline. Then on a pilot basis, we are also come up with the Incredible India helpline, which has been set up to guide the tourist. Then we are also focusing upon skill development so that we can come up with a trained youth, especially in the hospitality sector. So in this respect, Ministry of Tourism is running Incredible India Tourist Facilitator and Incredible India Tourist Guide Certification Program, okay, to come up with well-trained tourist facilitators. Then in GST 2.0 reforms, we gave a major boost to the tourism sector. How? When it comes to the hotels which are charging less than 7,500 per day, therein the GST has been reduced from 12% to 5%. And when it comes to the buses which have a seating capacity of more than 10 persons, therein the GST has been reduced from 28% to 18%. And the government is hopeful that these steps would give a boost to the tourism sector in India. Then in the last year budget, as you can see, budget 2025-26, we started focusing upon top 50 tourist destination in various states, and we are developing them in a challenge mode, okay, telling the states that you compete with each other, and states would be given with the performance linked incentive for effective destination management. So the better the management, better would be the money that would be provided by the center to the states. Then as I told you, we are focusing upon tribal belts. Okay, we want that the small players also should come forward when it comes to the hospitality sector. So under this, the government stated that collateral free loans under the Mudra loan would be provided for homestays when it comes to the tribal areas. And this would also help us in addressing the developmental needs of the tribal belts in India. Then there would be special focus on the destinations which are associated with the life of Lord Buddha. And we are giving a major push when it comes to the medical tourism. So we are promoting the Ayush facilities also, and India is emerging as a major medical tourism hub. Now, having understood the steps taken, the last thing that you need to know is what needs to be done so that we emerge as a major global tourist destination across the world. First and foremost, we need to learn the best practices which Singapore and Thailand have adopted. For example, focusing upon cleanliness, ensuring the safety and security of the foreign tourists who are coming in India, ensuring last mile connectivity. Then you need to rebrand and relaunch the narrative when it comes to India. So we have to come up with targeted narratives. Okay, you have to, as I said, that you need to break the narrative. So you sell the Himalayan trails, coastal belt, spiritual India, adventure India, luxury India. And then you need to invest in digital storytelling, like that is Incredible India's Experience the Infinite. So you have to record the experience of the tourists which are coming here, and that should be uploaded on social media. That would enable the people who are planning to visit India to get a first-hand experience that, okay, how the things, what kind of experience I'll be getting if I visit this particular place, tourist place which is situated in India. So in this, you need to create immersive virtual tours, influencer partnership should be there, user generated content. The tourists who have already visited, they should, we should incentivize them that you create a video in this respect, blog in this respect, and tell your experience, and that we can showcase. Then we need to address the infrastructure gaps. For this, we need to focus immensely on the cleanliness. So the sanitation facility should be emphasized upon. We need to make sure that the tourist destination garbage should be effectively, addressed. For that, we need to focus upon solid waste management effectively, and there should be segregation of the waste at the source itself, dry and wet waste. Okay, reliable internet facility should be there, last mile connectivity should be there, and we need to scale up the adopt a heritage scheme, so that the company should come forward and they renovate that particular cultural site, tourist site, and they provide class infrastructure there. Then we should prioritize the safety of the tourists, especially the female tourists who are visiting India. So we need to ensure multilingual support through various helplines, crack down on the scams, harassment, and create centralized app so that we can provide them with verified guides and transport. And lastly, we need to come up with visa on arrival for the world policy. In this respect, the experts point out that currently, as we have opened this visa on arrival for certain countries like Japan, South Korea, UAE, this should be open for countries across the globe. This we have to keep in mind that obviously the people coming from those countries with which India have security related challenges, for them this visa on arrival should not be open. And while doing this thing, we should keep reciprocity in mind, that which all countries where if we arrive there, where we are getting visa on arrival, which are the countries where Indians are getting this visa on arrival facility. To those countries, tourists, we should also provide this particular facility. Okay. That's all that we have to discuss in this particular topic. Based on the discussion that we had, I have framed a practice question for you people. So do practice this question, and with this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, the second topic is related to extrajudicial killings, which is happening in the state of Punjab. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 2, that is separation of powers, and GS paper 4 as well. Now, what is the storyline? Last year in November, the Punjab DGP basically gave a statement pointing out the rise in extrajudicial killings in Punjab, okay, since the Aam Aadmi Party came into power. So, after the Punjab DGP has given this particular statement, in that particular backdrop, NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, gave a notice to the Punjab Home Secretary. But it has been 2 months since the NHRC has given a notice to the Punjab State Home Secretary, but yet the Punjab state government has not responded to the notice given by the NHRC, and that is why this issue has come up again in news. Now, what is important from our exam perspective is to understand that what are these extrajudicial killings. As the name itself suggests, these are extrajudicial. That means no trial has been done, the court has not ordered this particular killing, no due process of law has been followed, and the security people and their agents have actually killed a person without following the due process of law. This is basically retributive in nature. Retributive justice basically says that the harm done by this particular person to another person A, the same harm should be done to this perpetrator. That is eye for an eye approach. That is what is retributive justice. It goes against the idea of reformative justice. And this is usually being done by the security forces in the name of maintaining law and order. okay, and combating terrorism. But the problem is this extrajudicial killings goes against Article 21, which talks about the procedure established by law, and it is also against the human rights. Now, what are the recent incidents of extrajudicial killings that we have observed in various states of India? First is your encounter in Manipur, and you can see here that how the Supreme Court itself has highlighted this issue of more than 1000 fake encounter killings which took place in Manipur. Then in 2020, we saw the Vikas Dubey encounter, who was basically a wanted gangster, and the police gave the story that he was trying to flee, run away, and that is the reason he met a car accident. Then we had this Hyderabad rape and murder case, okay, again the same story given by Telangana police, as you can see here. And in 2023, the gangster Atiq Ahmed's son Asad was killed in Jhansi encounter. Now you need to understand that why these extrajudicial killings are on a rise. First and the foremost reason is the public support which the police officials get once they do extrajudicial killing, and this was something there with the Hyderabad case. The police who actually killed the 4 people who were engaged in the Hyderabad rape and murder case, they were celebrated like heroes. And why do you think the public support these police officials who enter into extrajudicial killings? Because there is huge delay of cases. So they think that this is the right way to provide justice in a timely manner. Then police officials also get the support from the political parties, and this is something being alleged in the case of Punjab, okay, that the police officials are getting the support from the Aam Aadmi party. So you have to, when you are writing this thing, you have to write alleged, okay, the allegations have not been proved. So when I will be writing in the mains examination, I will not say that, okay, this is the case. I will say that it has been alleged that the police officials were getting the support from the party in power, that is Aam Aadmi party, okay. Then again, going by the idea of retributive justice, that is doctrine of proportionality. Whatever harm this person has done to the victim A, the same harm should be inflicted on this person, that is the perpetrator, that is eye for an eye approach. Then punitive violence, because the police forces think that this is the only way to bring crime rate in control, okay, because it creates a sense of fear among the potential criminals. Then why it is on a rise? Because of the inefficient investment in the forensics, okay. We don't have advanced technology when it comes to the criminal justice system, and that is the reason the police official time and again they resort to the 3D torture or this extrajudicial killings. These are the major reasons. Now, what are the ethical concerns associated with it? First concern is how it violates the human rights, because you are not giving that person the due right to appear in the court of law. It goes against the Article 21, and it also goes against the virtue ethics. Virtue ethics basically focus upon that a person should be of good character. If a person is of good character, he would be taking right decisions, okay. So it goes against virtue ethics because this is undermining somewhere the character of the police professionals, and ultimately they would not be taking good decisions, because if you allow extrajudicial killings now, what would happen? We would witness more cases of fake encounters, and that is something that I told you we have witnessed in case of Manipur. Then it goes against the professional ethics of the police. How it goes against the professional ethics of the police? Because police is supposed to uphold the law and order, not to take law and order in their own hands. If they are the ones who is not following the rule of law, how can you expect the public to follow the rule of law? And that is the reason when the police is engaging in extrajudicial killings at this, simultaneously what we are seeing, rise in mob lynching incident, because that is the shortest route to get justice, timely justice, okay. Then it goes against the idea of reformative justice, which argues that every individual should be given an opportunity to reform himself, okay. And it also goes against the deontological ethics, which talks about upholding certain moral duties. And as I told you, when it comes to police, they have this moral duty that they have to uphold rule of law. But they are the ones who are violating that particular thing. And ultimately, that is also incentivizing the public to take law and order in their hands and This is one of the major reasons that you're also witnessing the rise in mob lynching incidents. And another issue is with this extrajudicial killing, and that is something that you can write in the causes also, that the police officials which are doing these extrajudicial killings, they are actually celebrated as heroes by the public, and timely action is not taken against them. Okay. So when such police officials are not being punished in time, ultimately it is incentivizing the other police officials also to do these extrajudicial killings. And you must have seen various cases wherein the police is entering into fake encounter cases to actually get promotion. This is not something I am saying with respect to all the police officials, but there are people who are corrupt in this police system. Okay, this is not an allegation against the entire police force. Fine. What is the Supreme Court rulings when it comes to extrajudicial killings? So in D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal 1996, Supreme Court rightly highlighted that these extrajudicial killings actually violate the dignity of human being, because you are not giving that person fair right to appear before the court of law and present his side of the case. Then in Prakash Kadam versus Ram Prasad Vishwanath Gupta 2011 verdict of the Supreme Court observed that the fake encounters done by the police are nothing but cold-blooded murders. And once it is proved that a police official has done this cold-blooded murder, that police official should be given death sentence. And this we should consider as rarest of the rare cases. Then in Om Prakash versus State of Jharkhand 2012 verdict of the Supreme Court stated that these extrajudicial killings are illegal, that means they are not legal, under the criminal justice system of India, and the Supreme Court actually equated them with state-sponsored terrorism. Then in PUCL, that is People's Union for Civil Liberties versus State of Maharashtra 2014 verdict of the Supreme Court gave certain guidelines that the police forces needs to follow in case of extrajudicial killings or police encounters. First and foremost, once such an encounter or extrajudicial killings take place, FIR needs to be registered, and this is mandatory. Then the inquiry should be done by the magistrate, and all the records need to be maintained in written. Okay, when the investigation is done, everything should be in written format. What all intelligence input the police officials got, all that intelligence input should be in written format when the investigation is done. Then investigation should be carried out by independent agencies like CID. Because if you allow the police only to carry out the investigation, then we would witness conflict of interest. So to avoid that and to ensure that there is impartial probe when it comes to this extrajudicial killing, we should be carrying out the investigation by an independent agency. And whenever such incident take place, that is extrajudicial killings or police encounter, information needs to be given to the National Human Rights Commission or the State Human Rights Commission. So these guidelines should be followed by the police officials. What more needs to be done to ensure that the police officials uphold the rule of law? First and foremost, India should ratify the UN Convention Against Torture, which India has signed but it has not ratified. So we need to do this so that we can hold such police officials accountable. We need to ensure strict implementation of the guidelines given by the Supreme Court in 2014 verdict, that is PUCL versus State of Maharashtra. Then we need to provide adequate training to the police officials so that they time and again do not resort to third-degree torture. Okay, and we need to invest on the forensics also. So we need to upgrade the technology that is being used when it comes to investigating the crimes. And we need to overhaul the criminal justice system, basically upgrading the forensics facilities provided to the police officials. And this is very much important that once it is proven that a police officer actually committed an extrajudicial killing or a fake encounter, in that case, timely investigation and timely punishment should be given. This would act as a deterrence. Next time, the police officer would not think of doing fake encounters or extrajudicial killings to get the promotions. Okay, that's all that we need to know from this particular topic. So based on the discussion that we had, I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the simplified segment. Now, recently, the Odisha government has given the direction to shut down the forest right cells which were created by the central government under the Dharti Aba Janjatiya Gram Utkarsh Abhiyan scheme. So, in this respect, this has prompted the central government to scrutinize the same. Now, when it comes to these forest right cells, why they were created? So that we can expedite the process of the individual as well as community rights claimed by the forest dweller community. Now, when it comes to Odisha, although it is one of the best performer when it comes to the Forest Rights Act, so Odisha has issued the second highest number of forest right titles after Chhattisgarh. But the problem with Odisha is it has the sixth highest pendency rates when it comes to FRA claims. That is the reason it became important to set up these forest right cells. When it comes to these forest right cells, they were basically working under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. When you talk about this Dharti Aba Janjatiya Gram Utkarsh Abhiyan, it is basically a central scheme which was launched way back in 2024, and it was basically to provide the states with the additional human resources in form of the forest right cells so that we can expedite the processing of forest right claims under the FRA Act. This particular topic you can associate with the polity section of your prelim syllabus. Now, let's note down certain prelim pointers with respect to Forest Right Act of 2006. Now, the full name of this act is the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act, which was basically enacted in 2006. Now, what is the objective? Basically, to undo the historical injustice that the tribal community has faced when it comes to livelihood and food security. So, we are trying to ensure their livelihood and food security because of the developmental projects, time and again they were evicted from their forest lands that were there. Okay, so we are trying to address the issue of development induced displacement, which is a chronic problem which the tribals in India face. Who all are eligible to get the benefits of this particular act? So, the rights FRA claims could be made by a member or a community that has been in that particular area for at least 3 generations, that is 75 years, before the 13th day of December 2005. Because after that, in 2006, the FRA Act came into force. They have been living in that forest for this much time. Nodal ministry is basically your Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and 4 kinds of rights are provided under the FRA Act. First is the title rights. So, you need to make note of this thing that here we are not giving any new land. So, no new land would be granted. This title rights basically deal with the right to ownership to a land which is already cultivated by the tribals or the forest dwellers, and this is subject to a limit that is maximum of 4 hectares. Then use rights are also provided so that they can extract the minor forest produce, okay, and grazing rights are also provided. Then relief and developmental rights in case they are a victim of development induced displacement. Okay, so they are provided protection against eviction and rights to rehabilitation and basic amenities. Then forest management rights are also provided. Under this, it talks about the right to protect, regenerate or conserve or manage the community forest which the tribal community has been doing for generations. Okay, so this would help us in effective conservation of the forest ecosystem. Now, who are the authorities which are associated with granting these different kinds of rights that we discussed right now? So, first authority is your Gram Sabha. This would be the authority which would be initiating the process of FRA claims. Then you have the sub-divisional level community which would be inquiring that particular claim which is passed by the Gram Sabha, and ultimately it would be the district level committee which would be approving that FRA claim. However, when it comes to this FRA Act, the Zaza community has pointed out that there are high rejections of the FRA claims, okay, and this is somewhere suggested as one of the causes of rising Naxalism in India. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, as we all know that when it comes to Mr. Trump, unilaterally he has given this particular statement that now India would stop buying crude oil from Russia and Indian firms would start buying crude oil from Venezuela. In this particular respect, let's just try and understand that whether the Indian firms ready to get the Venezuelan crude oil or not. This particular topic you can associate with the economy section of your prelim syllabus. Now, this is something that I've already told you, that how in the backdrop of India-US trade deal that has been signed, the Trump has given this unilateral statement that India would now be buying more crude from the US, basically the Venezuelan oil. Now, when it comes to this crude oil which is coming from Venezuela, it is bottom heavy, it has high viscosity and it has high acid number. What does this actually imply? When I say it is bottom heavy, I basically mean that it is thicker and denser as compared to the other grades of crude oil that we get from West Asia and all, or from Russia. So, since it is thicker and denser, when it comes to Indian companies, only a handful of Indian refineries like the giant Reliance Jamnagar has the ability to process the Venezuelan crude oil. So, that basically implies that not all the refineries in India have that ability to process this thicker and denser Venezuelan crude oil. Then it has high viscosity. High viscosity basically means the resistance in flow. So, in order to improve the flow when it comes to using this crude oil in the automobile, we have to co-blend it with other lighter crude, okay, to an extent of 10 to 15%, and then it is processed. Acid number basically tells us that what is the acidity and the chemical mix of that oil. Because when it comes to this Venezuelan oil, it is said that it has a high acid number. That means it would lead to corroding, basically corrosion of the machines. It is a sour crude, basically it has high sulfur content, and this Venezuelan crude also have high metal and nitrogen content. Now, the Indian refineries have made this very valid point that when it comes to the uptake of the Venezuelan crude oil, it all depends upon the political stability. Because when it comes to Mr. Trump, he gets up and he gives any direction. You will be astonished to know that prior to 2019, we used to get crude oil from Venezuela. So, when it comes to Venezuela, it was the 5th largest supplier of oil before 2019. Okay, and Reliance Industries was the regular buyer of Venezuelan crude. But then US imposed sanctions. Then later on again, Mr. Trump eased the sanction in October 2023 and allowed us to import the Venezuelan crude oil for 6 months. So then Reliance Industries, again they started importing the Venezuelan crude oil. But then Trump said that no more relaxation would be given to you, although the Reliance Industries made a request, but then Trump said no, we are not going to give you an extension. Why this was the case? Because Mr. Trump and the Venezuela had some differences when it comes to conduct of free and fair presidential election in Venezuela. Okay. Then in the summer of 2025, Trump administration again threatened high tariffs on the countries which were buying Venezuelan crude. So the refineries in India, they have made a very valid point that when it comes to uptake of Venezuelan crude oil, it all depends upon the certainty, political certainty, that it would not be like we started importing Venezuelan crude oil and again Mr. Trump rise and say that now whosoever would be buying Venezuelan crude oil, we will be imposing sanctions on them or we will raise higher reciprocal tariff on them. Okay, that should not be the case. Although in this respect, the State Bank of India research points out that if India start importing the Venezuelan crude oil, because we know that when it comes to Venezuelan crude oil, it has high viscosity, it has high acid number. Okay, so that way the pricing of the Venezuelan crude oil would be less as compared to the crude oil that we get from West Asia country. So in this respect, the SEBI has pointed out that if we uptake the Venezuelan crude oil, this would reduce our import fuel bill. But the condition applied is for processing of this Venezuelan crude oil, since the refineries have to invest more. So in that respect, this would be helpful only when the government provide rupees 10 to 12%, $10 to $12 as a discount to the Indian refineries. Okay, so that it makes it economically viable for the refineries to process the Venezuelan crude oil. That's all that we have to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently the central government has stated that we are going to begin the second phase of Vibrant Village program, which would be covering the strategic villages along the land border which we share with Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Myanmar. The phase 1 was restricted to the states which shared the boundary with China. And the phase 1 was basically started to deal with the China salami slicing strategy. What is this China salami slicing strategy? Wherein what they do, let's suppose this is the line of actual control. What they will do, they would start building villages here. And slowly they'll increase their hold. And over a period of time, they'll start claiming that, okay, this is the area which we control, okay. Our jurisdiction extend to this area. This enabled them to avoid upfront war, but slowly and gradually they are trying to, tweak this line of actual control. So to deal with this, government came up with the phase 1 of Vibrant Village program, which was restricted to the villages which were along the China border. But in the phase 2, we are going to ensure development of the villages which share the border with these countries, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Nepal, as well as Myanmar. Okay, so the objective of phase 2 of this Vibrant Village program would be to basically meet the developmental needs and the well-being of the population who lives in these border villages. This particular topic you can associate with the government schemes related segment of the prelim syllabus. Now, when it comes to the phase 1 of Vibrant Village program, this was basically a centrally sponsored scheme. So you were getting the funding support from the states also. Entire funding was not coming from central government only. But when you talk about phase 2, this is 100% funded by the central government. So this is a difference that you need to keep in mind. With this respect, a question might be asked in the prelims examination, because nowadays, if you see the prelims paper, now internal security elements are also coming up in the prelims paper. Okay, so the phase 1 was centrally sponsored scheme, phase 2 is central sector scheme, 100% funding coming from the central government. Now, when you talk about the phase 1, it was introduced in the Union Budget of 22-23 and it was supposed to continue till 25-26, and that is the reason in 2026 we had the second phase. When you talk about the coverage, as I told you, it basically talked about those villages which share the border with China. So we were focusing upon the border villages which we have in Arunachal Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand and the Union Territory of Ladakh. Basically, we intend to improve the road connectivity. So when the road connectivity would be better, what would happen? If China wants to do any maneuver around the line of actual control, what we can do? We can easily mobilize our forces if the road connectivity is better. Then improving the village infrastructure, health facility, education infrastructure, energy, telecom and television connectivity. So if the communication lines are better, obviously the forces which are near the international border that we share with China, it would be easier for them to coordinate with the command center. What would be the objective? To basically create enough incentives for the people to stay in the selected border villages and make the border villages self-reliant and vibrant. And there is also a security angle to this. The security angle is if you incentivize the people in the border villages to stay there, because why the people would prefer to stay there? Time and again bombing could happen. Okay, so they would rather prefer to go away from those border villages. But we are creating the incentives for the local people to stay there. Why? So that they can act as eyes and ears of the security forces. And this is very well crucial for our internal security. Okay, so this is one of the major objectives. Now, when you talk about the phase 2, as I told you, it is a central sector scheme and it would be continuing till financial year of 22-28. We are going to cover around 17 states and union territories, but we would not be including those villages which have already been developed under the phase 1 of the Vibrant Village program. Now, these are the states in which the villages would be developed. What are the key features of the phase 2? So, we are ensuring value chain development, basically promoting cooperative SHGs, etc., improving the educational infrastructure there through smart classes, development of tourism circuits. Okay. Then, under this phase 2, we are basically having 4 thematic areas. Improving road connectivity, which enables us to mobilize the forces effectively if there is any maneuvering from China side. Telecom connectivity, enabling the forces to effectively connect with their command centers. Television connectivity, electrification. Okay. When you talk about the all-weather road connectivity, so herein we will ensure effective implementation of already the scheme that we have, that is Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, 4th phase, which is under the Ministry of Rural Development. So under this, the high-powered committee would be created, which would be chaired by the cabinet secretary, which would be looking into the suitable relaxations that we need to give, because in such high altitude area, if we are building the road connectivity, it would be having negative impact when it comes to the environment there. Okay, so suitable relaxations need to be provided to ensure security of the people. We are also going to leverage the technology. So we will be having the database, we will be using immensely the information database which is available in the PM Gati Shakti portal. And PM Gati Shakti portal, we have already discussed in the previous analyst also. This is being created, this portal is being created so that we can improve the coordination among the different ministries and departments which are associated with the infrastructure creation. So that is something that we are going to leverage in case of Vibrant Village program as well. And the intervention would be border specific, state and village specific, basically trying to understand that what are the specific needs of that particular village. Is the water the problem, road connectivity is the problem, television connectivity is the problem, and accordingly interventions would be done, and it would be based on village action plan. So it is a kind of bottom up approach also, so it would be done in a collaborative way. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has proposed that the airline should be allowed to ban the unruly passengers for disruptive behavior for 30 days. And this they can do without referring the particular matter to an independent committee. This particular topic you can associate with the prelims syllabus, that is regulatory bodies. Now, what is the existing framework currently? Currently, if there is a case of disruptive conduct, that matter needs to be referred to an independent committee, which is usually headed by a retired district and sessions judge. Now, this committee has to inquire into that matter and give its decision within 45 days. And once the committee give the decision, only then a flying ban could be enforced. But right now, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has proposed amendment to this particular thing. Okay, and they have issued this proposal under the Rule 133A of the Aircraft Rules of 1937. So, in this particular respect, the DGCA has stated that airline should be authorized to impose a flying ban on a person who is doing some kind of disruptive behavior during a flight without referring that particular matter to independent committee. Disruptive acts basically include consumption of alcohol, smoking, tampering with the emergency kits, engaging in process of sloganeering, unruly conduct arising from intoxication. It also additionally includes screaming, causing annoyance to fellow passengers, kicking or banging seat backs or tray tables, etc. And airlines will inform the DGCA about any flying ban imposed and maintain a database of such passengers. The ban does not add passengers to the regulator's official no-fly list. Now, what is important from our exam perspective, because this proposal has not come into force, it is just an amendment that has been proposed by the DGCA. Because of the various aviation accidents, DGCA has time and again been news. Okay, so let's understand prelim pointers with respect to this particular body. So when you talk about the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, it is the regulatory body in the field of civil aviation which is primarily dealing with the safety issues. It was established way back in 1978, but it was given with the statutory status in 2020 only, that is through Aircraft Amendment Act of 2020. It functions under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It had its headquarters in New Delhi. And what are the primary functions which are done by this particular body? So it is responsible for regulation of air transport services to from within India and for enforcement of civil air regulation, air safety, and it has to look into the airworthiness standards. Okay, whether the airlines, the aircrafts that they have, is it having that airworthiness standard or not. It is the one which coordinates with the International Civil Aviation Organization, the international body that we have. Then investigation of air accidents and incidents and rendering technical assistance to court and committee of inquiry. So if any aviation accident is happening, this body would be doing the investigation, and if they feel that some things needs to be changed based on technical ground, they can suggest that to the court of law. And they have to conduct regular safety inspection of all the airlines to ensure that the aircrafts are meeting the airworthiness standards, to ensure that they are meeting the safety standards. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next topic of today's analyst. Now, The Joint Parliamentary Committee, which is looking into this idea of simultaneous polls, that how we can introduce the simultaneous polls, it has come up with an idea that we can impose curbs on introduction of no confidence motion if the government which is in power just have 1 year remaining. Okay, that is something which this committee is looking into. This topic you can associate with the polity section of your prelim syllabus. Let's understand the news first. First and foremost, you need to understand what is this idea of simultaneous elections. So it basically talks about aligning the election cycle of the Lok Sabha with that of state assemblies. Okay, this would allow the voters to cast their vote for both the tiers of government, that is state as well as the national level, on the same day in their constituency, although when it comes to voting, it could occur in phases across the country. So this would be done by synchronizing the electoral timelines, and this is being done so that we can reduce the logistic cost and minimize the disruption caused by frequent elections, because the model code of conduct is in force, so that impacts the governance. Now, when it comes to this Joint Parliamentary Committee, which is looking into this bill on simultaneous election, it is considering that to give effect to this simultaneous election thing, what we can do is we can introduce a bar when it comes to introduction of no confidence motion against the government in power if it is left with only 1 year of its term. Now, why the panel is thinking of this particular idea? Because this is something that we have in place with respect to Panchayati Raj institution in certain states. Like this is something that we have in case of Tamil Nadu. So, no confidence motion in case of the Panchayati Raj institutions in case of the state of Tamil Nadu. The act says that no confidence motion cannot be moved in the last year of the term against the certain panchayat office bearers. But this goes in contrast with what we have in case of Karnataka, because recently Karnataka government in February itself, it has given a ruling that there should not be any limit when it comes to, there should not be any ban when it comes to introduction of no confidence motion, even if the Panchayati Raj institution office bearers are left with 1 year, okay, when it comes to their term. Why? Because if we impose this ban, this would allow them to misuse their office in the remaining tenure. Now, from a prelims perspective, we need to understand that what is the difference between no confidence motion and censor motion. Now, censor motion, it is usually passed to raise concern with respect to specific policies and actions of a particular minister or a particular ministry. But when it comes to no confidence motion, it is basically introduced to check whether the Council of Ministers enjoy the confidence of the Lok Sabha or not, because this goes with the idea of responsible government outlined under Article 75, Clause 3 of the Indian Constitution. So, when it comes to censor motion, for its introduction, the MP has to state the reason that why the Lok Sabha should adopt this. But when it comes to no confidence motion, no reason needs to be stated for its adoption. And one more thing that you need to keep in mind is when it comes to no confidence motion and the censor motion also, it could be introduced only in the Lok Sabha and not in the Rajya Sabha. Okay. Then it can be moved against an individual minister or a group of minister or the entire council of minister. Okay, this is with respect to censor motion. But no confidence motion deals with responsible government, so it would be moved against the entire council of ministers only, not against a single minister. And when it comes to censor motion, if it is passed in the Lok Sabha, it does not mean that the council of ministers have to resign. Okay, it simply means that, okay, the concern which the MP was having, that is right. But if this no confidence motion get passed, then in that case, the council of minister has to resign. And for the no confidence motion, we only need simple majority. Okay, that's all that we need to know in today's analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next. So don't forget to practice the quiz and check the knowledge. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a great day, all of you.